This is Brother Ron, and welcome to We All Be News Radio and TV, the news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
We have not overcome. We have not overcome. We have not overcome today. Good evening, boys and girls, scholars and laymen. It's your hostess with the mostest in terms of information for your edutainment, Brother Ron, also known as R2. C2, H2, the Artivist, and welcome to another wonderful, informative, encouraging, insightful edition of the Artivist Thinks. I'm coming to you post March of Our Lives. This is the March of Our Lives. Okay, post March of Our Lives weekend. Got a lot of things I want to say in this segment. A lot of things that were not covered in the mainstream, not mainstream, but mainstream, scream, media. Fake news are us, okay? A lot of things I'm going to talk about in this segment were not covered. We got to learn how to stop getting in our feelings and emotions, because the job of these mass distractors, these weapons of mass distractions, that is the media apparatus, the media industry complex, is to distract, is not to entertain, not to develop critical thinking, but to entertain, to distract, to mislead, to misdirect. So really, the fake news establishment is nothing but a real bad magic trick, and it needs to be exposed. How do you expose? How you get rid of fake news? Is like roaches. You spray Raid. The truth raid. It's time for a truth raid. Raid! Everybody hit the dance floor. Not that raid. Okay, but I'm part of the truth brigade. The truth brigade. I want to bring some facts as well as some of my point of view. But what I want to encourage you all to do is to do your own research. Let me point out some things I've been thinking about, but take it upon yourself to utilize this weapon of mass distraction known as the internets, and turn it into something, a weapon and tool of your empowerment, because information dissemination, because the thing that the powers that be will try to do in order to control people is control your ability to receive and circulate information, as well as to defend yourselves. Once again, the powers that be, what they try to do is to control your ability to obtain information that you could utilize for your empowerment, for your upgrade, for your advantage, as well as take away ways to defend yourself. And this is what's happening right now. And it's more than one way you can look at this. You know, I remember when Baba Dick Gregory was around. He's still with us in spirit and in energy. But when he was around in his physical form, he was warning us like a prophet. He like an Old Testament prophet, right? In the last days, Not better days, but less days. Okay, he was telling us about how what's going on right now, reminding him of the Third Reich. And if you're not familiar with what happened during the Third Reich, how Hitler was able to rise to power. There's a lot of fear mongering going on right now. But one of the most important things that people do, what they utilize, like his main man, Joseph Goebbels, the master of propaganda for the Nazi regime, they understood the power of controlling the narrative and disseminating the information they want the people to hear, and controlling the narrative and putting it out in a way that benefited their agenda. So this is what's going on right now. And I know, unless you was in a coma this weekend, y'all know what went down this weekend was the March of Our Lives, led by the Generation Z or some Z's. It's all going time will tell if they about that action or if they about putting people back to sleep again. So it was successful from all indications from the mainstream media. Hundreds of thousands of children throughout the U.S. In particular, the hot zone was D.C. That's the center of power in this country. That vortex of power. They believe over 800,000. Estimates range from 500,000 to 800,000 plus gathered in the nation's capital to encourage lawmakers to change the gun laws. So it was interesting because I know a lot of pushback. The media, this country is always good at creating boogeyman. They always need a villain to rally the troops. They always need somebody that can rally around a boogeyman. And a lot of times that job falls on a black man to be the boogeyman. I talked about that in the last podcast about how America loved to use the black man as their go-to boogeyman. Because something about this system, it thrives off of fear, not off truth and life, but fear and darkness. So what better representative than a black man to rally the troops around and to beat them down, to beat a point to the masses. But I'm particularly interested in like the Killer Mike NRA TV interview. It's like the NRA is the new KKK. Like basically the media has morphed the NRA, that's the National Rifle Association, it seems like that, into the new Ku Klux Klan, which is interesting. But like I believe, like MLK believed 50 years ago, that the greatest purveyor of violence on the planet is my own government. What Malcolm said about the chickens coming home to roost at the JFK assassination, and like basically was saying you reap what you sow. All the stuff we have done around the world and even at home, terrorizing our own citizens. I say we, I mean our government, because you got to say we. I wasn't born back then, but hell, if I pay taxes into a filthy and wicked system, then I brought it. You know what I'm saying? I drank the Kool-Aid. So if we're paying taxes, if we're subsidizing our government and doing wicked things to our people as well as people abroad, then it's we, it's us. This is us. This is us. This is us. I ain't talking about that sitcom y'all keep on telling me I need to see. See, everybody keep on trying to get into, you got to see this show and you got to look at this movie and you got to follow this reality show. But here's the thing. The best entertainment going for my money or lack of money is the real world. Get into this real world matrix. Not this fantasy world, not Wakanda, but get tuned into what's going on now. But a lot of us rather tune out to the reality of our situation. You think you in a 5 season or 4 seasons hotel when you really live in a Roach Motel. That's the reality. We live in a Roach Motel. So y'all don't want to deal with the reality. Y'all just think that the crunchy things under your feet are peanut shells, not cockroaches. So this is what we're dealing with right now as a people. But I want to get into that. Killer Mike did the NRA TV interview, came on a lot of backlash. But to me, he ended up apologizing. But there was no need to apologize. He have a right to freedom of expression. He's an artist, and he's a American. And the First Amendment is the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech. I didn't believe he bullied anybody. He spoke about bullies, how bullies was a necessity in this system, because you need bullies to learn how to stand up for yourself. Because, in my opinion, bullies help you to either honor or betray your purpose. It really reveals who you are when you get in a situation of bullying. But bullying happens even when you grown, like in the workplace, like in other places and other facets of human activity. So this country is a bully. I mean, look at how some of these social media outlets, they're bullies. They try to shut down people channels and platform because they're not in agreement when they ask questions. See, you can't say we live a democracy when you are penalizing for asking certain questions that might not be popular. How can you say we're a democracy when a person offers a different narrative to the official narrative, a counter narrative, and yet the resources of the system want to shut that person down and their ability to effectively communicate their ideas? That is not democracy by any means. So in the social media world, you definitely got your bullies. I ain't talking about the people that we think are the usual suspects, but I'm talking about these institutions who have benefited out the manipulation and exploitation of people's intellectual property. You have these companies, you know who they are, who have benefited immensely off our collective and individual intellectual property, and yet they want to make you the villain. They want to make you hate yourself for being you. And this is the problem we're in. But anyway, Killer Mike said some things about why it is important for black people, for so-called African Americans, to really value gun ownership in America as a means of not only just protecting yourself, but as a means to help sustain yourself through hard times, whether it be, you hunt for your food, living off the land, and all that stuff. But yet he was villainized by black people Twitter and other people and groups and whatnot. They cyberbullied Killer Mike into an apology. He had no reason. He didn't have to issue an apology, but he apologized because he felt like his message or interview that was done on NRA TV was taken out of context, was misconstrued. Like I said, the NRA, according to the mainstream media, is the new Klan. That's how they frame the narrative. But if you take the chance, and I want to encourage people to check out the NRA TV Killer Mike interview. Now, it was a part of a documentary that's basically like 18 minutes long, but his segment is under 7 minutes long. They actually got it separated from the whole documentary, so you can look at that segment for yourself and judge what he was talking about, and was he out of line for saying what he said. And then also, the NRA, like any political savvy group or organization, they have an agenda. So the host of the show made it clear that he was not in agreement with the March for Our Lives movement that took place this weekend. But Killer Mike his agenda was letting people know, especially black people, that we must learn how to protect ourselves, that we got to stop being political pawns. And those points were lost because people got into their emotions about what they assumed he was saying, instead of really overstanding or even understanding what he actually said. And to be honest with you, Killer Mike will be in agreement with our honorable ancestors. Like, I believe that on the gun issue for African Americans, that Killer Mike is in line with Ida B. Wells Barnett, our righteous ancestor, with Brother Malcolm X, our righteous ancestor, with Robert F. Williams, our righteous ancestors, the Black Panther Party for self-defense, the Deacons for defense. All these people believe in arming and protecting ourselves and yourself. I could name several instances in history where guns actually saved black lives that are not being taught by the mainstream miseducational institutions, that came through my own research and understanding, talking with the elders, doing the research, reading books and different points of views. And really, you could go into the We All Be TV archives to see the fruits of the labor. But I want to make this point. Some of the thoughts that came in my head about gun control and what it's really all about And if you don't get anything else out of this segment, I hope these points I have talked about through my social media platform hits home. And by the way, please feel free, family, if you love the words from Brother Herd, share it with your networks. Support this movement. You know, buy art from the artists, buy art gear, wear the artivist art. You know, all these links and stuff to how you can support the We All Be movement and the work of the artivists will be available in the subscription box as well. Links are posted throughout this video. So, you know, when I get inbox and direct message and people call me and text messages and how can we support you, you know, people are always asking what more I can do for them. They always got something I need to do for them, but what can you do to help Brother Run help you even better? And that's how, you know, you could either make a one-time or recurring donation to PayPal, or you could join the patreon.com/We All Be platform and get their recurring donation coming in, or donation. It takes a nation to do wop, do wop, do wop, do wop, do wop. So if you liking this information, because man, I got some opposition and they trying to get me for a little bit of anything. You know, they show you that you are being effective, because the bullies are real. The thirst is real. The hunger is real. So these folks don't play. When you start stepping on toes and you start getting in people's mind, when folks could come up to you on the street and start reciting what you said online, you know you are heading in heady company, because, you know, people make the mistake. We All Be existed before the Dick Gregory interviews, before the Judge John Brown interviews. We All Be is an extension of me, but I was raised to give back to my community. I was raised to be a brothers and sisters keeper. I believe in investing in people. That's one of the greatest investments you can make in this lifetime on your journey to invest in others. So I try to utilize my gifts to their end, but I'm still a human being. I'm just a messenger, but I'm not the message. So I want to encourage y'all to support what we're doing, because you know, people, you know, they demand a lot. We demand a lot of our so-called leaders and our so-called doers. You know, so I'm asking y'all to match to match the demand. You know, the only demand things of me, I'm demanding things of you all. If you want to see this tree grow, keep on giving, and trust me, the stuff that I'm putting out there is more valuable than gold. So here we go. I want to get into my thoughts about what I was thinking this weekend. I put it out in memes and on my social media platforms. The people that follow me know how I got a unorthodox way of thinking about things. I don't think with the crowd. I think different. I embrace my own uniqueness to a situation. Like, this is one thought that came to me this weekend. Guns will be illegal if black folks were the main producers and suppliers. Think about it. Guns would be illegal if black folks were the main producers and suppliers. It really goes back to that Chris Rock joke he did some years ago on one of his HBO specials, when Chris Rock said, if cigarettes were made by black folks with jerry curls in Mississippi, it would be illegal than a motherfucker to buy a cigarette. And it makes you laugh, but it also makes you cry, because what he's speaking is really truth. Think about the war on drugs, or prohibition. Prohibition was state sponsored, and it allowed organized crime to grow up. Without prohibition, you don't get an Al Capone or Lucky Luciano. You don't get a Kennedy family dynasty without prohibition. So it was legalized drug dealing for white ethnic groups, and everybody benefited who was so-called white or white looking, except for black folks. Soon as we try to do something, they make it illegal. Same thing with the drug trade, the war on drugs. People don't realize that Franklin Roosevelt, that his maternal grandfather, Warren Delano Jr., made the family fortune from selling opium to the Chinese. Franklin Roosevelt, one of our so-called greatest presidents, four-term United States President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, his grandfather was a real American gangster who made the family fortune selling opium to the Chinese. He was a part of the Opium Wars. Take a look. It's all online. That's your president. Okay. And John Kennedy, another president. His father was Joe Kennedy, who was a gangster selling bootleg liquor from Canada. He was business partners with not only the Meyer Lanskys and Frank Costellos of the underworld, but also the Bronfman family, the Canadian Jews who created Seagrams, a very popular alcoholic beverage, and who also became big players in the entertainment industry complex later on. So this is what I'm talking about. But they would never allow a black Kennedy dynasty like Joe Kennedy and company. They would never allow a black person a chance to legitimize their ill-gotten gains into generational wealth. You know, Lucky Luciano said it best: behind every great wealth, there's a great crime. Behind every great wealth, there's a great crime. You don't become filthy rich without doing some dirty shit. Once again, you do not become filthy rich by not doing some dirty shit. So, with that said, think about guns will be illegal if black folks were the main producers and suppliers. That's not too far-fetched. Think about how in the war on drugs, how you had basically the same product. Crack and coke is basically one and the same. But yet, black folks under the Clinton crime bill of 1994, you got a harsher sentence for dealing in coke. For dealing in crack, than he did for dealing in coke. Even now, with this opioid or opium crisis, whatever, it's not considered a crime. It's considered a crisis because it affects more white people than people of color. There's there's all this misleading stuff about the so-called welfare state, about black people taking advantage of the system. The system has always taken advantage of the pain of black folks, of the talents of black folks, of the labor of black people. White women have benefited more from affirmative action than any other group. White women. There are more white people on drugs than black people. There are more white people on welfare than black people. But yet, every time there's a national problem, they want to put a black face on it. Like with Ronald Reagan talk about these fat cat welfare queens with fur coats and Cadillacs up in Chicago, making up all types of bullshit. Or how they utilize the Willie Horton thing. That's how George H.W. Bush got elected, by playing to white people's fears. It's like his campaign strategist, Lee Atwater, talked about how in 1954 you could say nigger, 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 but now you got to use code. Instead of nigger, 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 you say state rights, states' rights. It's like when Ronald Reagan, a former governor of California, went down to the Neshoba County Fair in Mississippi back in 1980 to confirm his nomination as the Republican candidate for United States president. Neshoba County Fair, or Neshoba County, is where those three civil rights workers, Michael Swerner, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, were murdered. Not just by the Klan, but by the state of Mississippi. Because you see, you had the sheriff of the county. It's where his sheriff deputy involved. The sheriff, I believe, was Lawrence Rainey, and the deputy was Cecil Price. So you had the police apparatus working with the so-called Klan and with the state. Because look up the White Citizen Council and the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission. So the state conspired to rob these three civil rights workers of their civil and human rights. So this is what we got to understand. So who is the Klan? What is real state-sponsored terrorism? So, again, these are things that I've been thinking about. Anytime black folks want to organize to determine self-determination, the system of state-sponsored white inferiority gets in the way. Think about what happened in the Lane Race Massacre of 1919. The genesis of what happened there was that the white inferiority structure, the local whites inferiority structure, did not want the black sharecroppers get together to form a union to get better prices for their work, for their labor, for the fruits of their labor. So they actually shot up a church. They shot up a black church. You had white goons shooting up a black church where sharecroppers were meeting to form a union. So they don't tell you all this in school. They also don't mention the fact that the majority of the race riots and massacres in this country was started by law enforcement. Once again, the majority of the race massacres, slaughters, and so-called riots were started by police officers. Even in Memphis, the Memphis massacre of 1866 was started by Irish police officers, which basically burned down churches and schools, and they was killing and raping black women and children, men, whatever. That's the Memphis massacre of 1866, which led to the era in American history known as the Reconstruction period. That was a direct response to what happened in Memphis back in May of 1866. So never forget that most of the race riots and massacres that you read about or don't know about in American history was either instigated or supported and sustained by law enforcement in this country. So-called law enforcement. So it begs the question. We talked about prohibition. We talked about how guns would be illegal if black folks were the main producers and suppliers. Let's talk about the fact that how can you trust the same government that brought you slavery, prohibition, Jim Crow, and the war on drugs with gun control? In other words, how can you beg the devil for mercy? The devil is not qualified to give you mercy. The devil is only qualified to give you more hell and grief. You're not going to get peace of mind from the devil. But what you can get peace of mind from is understanding the devil that you deal with and that you know. We should have a better understanding of the devil that we deal with. You should know your enemies like some of y'all know y'all friends. You should know your enemies like some of y'all know family. You should understand the opposition and your relationship with the opposition. So it's like a credit rating. United States, as it relates to how they deal with black people, so-called African Americans, has a low credit score. Why does the United States have a low credit score? Look at their track record. Look at their credit history as it relates to black people. Slavery, chattel slavery, lynching, race massacres, no 40 acres and a mule, Jim Crow. Look at it. Assassinations of leaders, decimation of communities, destruction of the black family unit, systemic destruction, systemic approved genocide of the melanated people, so-called black people, so-called African Americans, descendants of Dred Scott, as I call them. So study the history of this country and how it treats black people. Think about what the United States Supreme Court told Dred Scott in so many words, that you have no rights, you nor your descendants have any rights that the white man is bound to respect. Not only did it say that, but it also said that that you have no claim to your own intellectual property, that you can't even own and create generational wealth off your own intellectual property. We've seen that with Jack Daniels. When the guy who founded the Jack Daniels alcohol dynasty, he was taught how to make that famous and popular brand by a black man. Now, Jack Daniels, his descendants, they got a lot of money, but what did that black man family get out of the deal? What did the guy who told Jack Daniels how to make that brew, what did he get? What did his descendants get? Why are they getting? It's like with Henrietta Lacks. Her family's still poor and destitute in Baltimore. can't afford health insurance. But yet, a white woman was able to tell the story. Rebecca Skloot, who was a former University of Memphis professor, she was able to tell the story, get big time movie deals and book deals. She started a foundation in Henrietta Lack's names, but she's not poor. But Henrietta Lack's daughter died broke several years ago. And that was her mama that was exploited without her consent. The immortal cells of Henrietta Lacks. The big pharma, the medical industry complex have benefited immensely from the blood sacrifice of that young black woman. But yet her family has been catching hell ever since that time. All types of trauma, systemic generational trauma. Come on now. Think about the fact that in Central Park, just until recently, I believe, they had a statue of a so-called father of gynecology, J. Marion Sims, who made it his business to torture and mutilate black women without their consent, who did not even give them anesthesia as he was mutilating their bodies, tearing their womb from part to part, doing things that would make even Mengele, so-called Dr. Joseph Mengele, blush, how he treated black women, children, mutilating, destroying their bodies. Because we were not seen as human beings. We were really seen as commodities and beasts of burden. And it was okay by the white inferiority systems or institutions, whether it be the church or whether it be Wall Street or whether it be that government, that black folks had no rights that the white man was bound to respect. So look at the track record of America. She has a poor credit rating when it comes to dealing with black people. Y'all talking about gun control when it's the water that's killing you. Bigger than Flint, y'all. They have effectively, in the name of so-called progress, they have effectively contaminated our waters, contaminated our air. Think about Flint. I remember looking at a documentary about Richmond, California, how there was a large number of children of color growing up with asthma. And people will say, well, asthma, is that hereditary? It's only hereditary when you live in an environment that's when you are a victim of environmental racism. The shit that we think hereditary is not necessarily hereditary. It's a systemic hereditary. It's systemically hereditary if you are coming up in a system that okays environmental racism against you and your people. See, there was a Chevron refinery in the Richmond, California community that polluted the air. So if you came in contact with the air for long periods of time, you could not help but have breathing problems. And a lot of times people will pass it on to their children because the environment that was coming up in. So look at Flint. As of March 26, 2018, the water is still so contaminated that it's not even safe to wash your car with the water. According to a resident told me 2 years ago that the water was so contaminated that they were advised not to wash their cars with the water. It's like kind of like you think about, why are we drinking Coca-Cola if you could wash your battery off with Coca-Cola, your car battery? If you could clean your car battery with Coca-Cola, should we really be drinking Coca-Cola? So, that Flint water thing, you had a black president and people talking about, well, it's bureaucratic. To me, that's a state of emergency. People talk about what was going on in Syria and Libya and all over the planet, but your own backyard is a mess. Your own people are dying. It's like even with the Ferguson thing, where they're using chemical warfare against citizens of the so-called state of misery. They were putting them in a state of misery using chemicals that were outlawed by the Geneva Convention, I believe, or by the UN. You had a black president, so-called black president. You had a so-called Democratic governor who was the head of the state of misery at that time. They allowed the state to abuse their powers against black folks. Then you had Eric Holder come down there, the man who said, we are a nation of cowards and we can't talk honestly about the race thing. He come down there, having coffee and cakes and cookies and milk with people, and patting us on the head and giving people hopes all up high up in the air, and could not even do anything to Darren Wilson. And black folks out in the streets, marching in circles and crying and protesting and screaming and stressing out. But yet you had a so-called black president that allowed the people that he received 90+% support from to be exploited and terrorized in that fashion. Nobody was punished for what happened to Mike Brown. Nobody was punished for what happened to Trayvon Martin. And over and over and over. So when you talk about gun control, when this country is really out of control, how you gonna talk about controlling a tool or a weapon when this country has no type of decent track record when it comes to bringing folks to justice? We have violated black lives for generations. And yet, I'm in Memphis, and my grandparents, my mama's family, they grew up in South Memphis near the Army Depot. Now, it was interesting that I lost both of my grandparents to cancer. And a lot of people in our neighborhood died from cancer, living near that Army Depot. Come to find out, the government was putting all types of poisons, chemical poisons within the ground near our neighborhood. So you had a lot of people in the neighborhood die from cancer. So, this ain't nothing new. We're looked upon as being nothing but lab rats and guinea pigs in the so-called Great American Experiment. What do you think the projects are? They let you know you're a lab rat or guinea pig, and they put you in the project. That's nothing but a social experiment. The hood rat is a government creation. They created environments to create certain type of people. It's behavior modification. So they poison our water supply. They poison our air. Don't get me started on food, on Frankenfoods, and all the stuff they put in food products. I gotta say, food products. It's like cheese products. It's not the real thing, but it's edible. But is it really edible? Self-destruction. We headed for self-destruction. So I know I was like, man, Ron talk all day on this stuff. Well, a lot to digest. But let me see what else I said. Yeah, like I said before, the best way to control a people is to take away their ability to be informed and to defend themselves. And that's another thing, how they utilized Dr. King's granddaughter for this agenda. Now, I had the chance of meeting Dr. King's granddaughter about 2 years ago during MLK Day celebration in Nashville. Her father, MLK III, Martin Luther King III, was there with his wife and daughter, and she's very inspirational, beautiful soul. And Dick Gregory was there. Mark Thompson of Make It Plain of Sirius was the moderator and host. They held a conversation at the Nashville Convention Center on MLK Day 2016 between Dick Gregory and MLK III. And at the end, she closed it out. Very charming, beautiful sister. And she said those inspirational words she said this past weekend about being the greatest generation, very cute and adorable. So I had a chance to interact with her and meet her. But the thing about it is that it's funny what the media does, because Dr. King has a niece, Alveda King, that does not fit with the so-called liberal narrative. And one day I plan on interviewing her. I think she's a very fascinating individual. I believe her father was Dr. King's brother, the late A.D. King, who died also under questionable circumstances, like his dear brother Martin. That family went through a lot, to say the least. But Dr. King, the man himself, was not anti-gun. As a matter of fact, talking to Charles Evers, the big brother of Medgar Evers, he told me that MLK felt really safe in his home when he would come to Mississippi. If he was in Jackson, Mississippi area, he would not walk. He would rush over to Charles Everett's home. And Charles Everett is very outspoken. He's a proud Republican, a proud black man. He doesn't bite his tongue. He always say his piece. He don't care who you are. And to me, he's consistent. He's not everybody's cup of tea, but he's like one of my favorite people from the civil rights generation to talk to. He always has some type of interest and insight into the situation. But he said that, Dr. King always felt at home in his house because he told me one time, Dr. King told him one time, well, Charles, I feel so safe around here because you have all the guns and goons. And Charles Evans said 3 G's he believe in is God, guns, and goons. Those is 3 G's. So he stayed strapped himself. But Martin Luther King, he had no problem being around armed black men protecting him. As a matter of fact, when he used to come to Memphis, he always had an all-black police security detail protecting him. It was only the last time he came to Memphis he lacked that security. MLK was killed because he lacked the all-black police security detail he would normally get in Memphis. And I actually had a chance to interact and interview Captain Jerry Williams, a black police officer. He was one of the first black police officers in the modern Memphis era. He was hired back in the late 1940s. But he was the man who was responsible for organizing Dr. King's black police security detail. And it bothers him to this day that they were not called to protect Dr. King. And like he said it himself, he would never have advised Dr. King to stay at the Lorraine Motel in that room 306. Because Dr. King didn't stay at the motel or hotel. He would stay at the Holiday Inn. Dr. King was an integrationist. He didn't believe, he believed in staying in hotels that had majority white clientele to integrate them. But Lorraine was, a hotel. Celebrities stayed there, black stars stayed there during the Jim Crow era, but it's also known as the hotel. Hotel, if you know what I mean. So Dr. King, that night he stayed over the Lorraine on April 3rd. It was the only time he ever stayed overnight at the Lorraine Motel. So yeah, had he had armed black men around him, April 4th, 1968 may not have happened. Who knows? Because they said by the time Dr. King died, they did the autopsy. They say he had the heart of a 60-plus-year-old man. All that stress and trauma he was going through. Because y'all forget that Dr. King was stabbed by a black woman up in Harlem doing a book signing. Almost died. Had he sneezed, he would have died because the sharp instrument would have pierced his heart and he would have bled to death. He would have suffocated in his own blood. Yeah, like I said, MLK had no problems with an armed black man protecting him. And I say all to say because, when James Meredith got shot, he was doing his March Against Fear campaign. He was by himself marching down the Mississippi. I want to say it was Highway 51, I believe. He got shot by a sniper. And Dr. King and his people, like Kwame Ture. Y'all know who Kwame Ture is, Stokely Carmichael. Brother Mukasa Dada, who was known as Willie Ricks, who was Mr. Black Power, the guy who came up with the phrase that Stokely made very popular in the mainstream media. But they finished the march, but Dr. King had protection from the Deacons for Defense, a group of black veterans who believe in armed self-defense. They protected Dr. King as he marched into the deep, dark hearts of Mississippi. So Dr. King had armed security guards, courtesy of the Deacons for Defense, protecting him as he marched through Mississippi and completed that march on behalf of James Meredith. And I believe they ended up at Tougaloo College, which was a very important historic institution for organizing the movement in Mississippi. It played a key role in organizing during Freedom Summer of '64 as well too. But James Brown did a concert at Tougaloo College at the end to celebrate the march success. But Dr. King would not have been able to properly survive that march had he no protection from the Deacons for Defense. So that's a history that don't get told in the so-called popular narrative of the civil rights movement. And it does a disservice when we don't talk about that issue of protection of our leaders and of the people of the movement. Even if you go back to Dr. King's first successful campaign, the Montgomery bus boycott, which lasted 381 straight days, we had black men that were protecting the black community. You had black veterans from World War II and the Korean War who armed themselves to protect that movement. Because, like I said, we go back to Reese Taylor. She just passed away just several days before her birthday. I think her 99th birthday, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe 98th birthday. But she passed away. But she was gang raped by white men coming home from church in Alabama back in September 3rd, 1944. It was well known in Montgomery that black women were being raped and abused and sexually assaulted by white men in authoritative positions, whether it be police officers, bus drivers, or taxi cab drivers. So when the Montgomery bus boycott kicked off, it was not just about sitting in the front of the seat of the bus. It was about protecting black womanhood and promoting black manhood. Like Judge Brown would say something, promote black manhood and protecting black womanhood. That what that was about. So, but you had armed black men doing that. Black men with guns. Negroes with guns. That famous book or infamous book, regardless of your perspective, by Robert F. Williams, who was the president of the Monroe, North Carolina chapter of the NAACP. He believed in self-defense. No, that guy didn't shoot us with the Klan in North Carolina. He believed in self-defense. Him and his wife, Sister Mabel Williams. And they had to leave the country because they were set up on trumped up kidnapping charges. So they left the country and went to Cuba, where they understood the power of controlling your narrative. So they started Radio Free Dixie down in Cuba. Sounds familiar? News Free Dixie for the 21st century. But they started Radio Free Dixie down in Cuba to let the world and black folks back home know that it is time for an armed resistance. That it's time for an armed revolution. So the Black Panther Party of self-defense, make no mistake about it, they were influenced by the Deacons for Defense as well as by Robert F. Williams. Matter of fact, Huey P. Newton is from Louisiana. He's from Monroe, Louisiana. He was born there. And the Deacons for Defense originated in Bogalusa, Louisiana. And the Black Panther Party, the political party before the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, started in Lowndes County, Alabama. So the armed resistance, black empowerment, self-defense movement, had roots in the South. Had them deep roots, you heard me? So I say all this to say, Killer Mike didn't have to apologize when it came to why black folks should arm themselves. And the thing about it is, black folks got mad because he got on the NRA platform to say that. Whatever you might think his words were taken out of, whatever it is, he's entitled to his opinion. Because Killer Mike, for one, has been consistent about black folks using guns for self-defense and being a part of everyday black life. He's been consistent with that message. There's nothing new. And the thing about it is, like I said, he'll be on the right side with the ancestors, like Ida B. Wells. She would agree with Killer Mike. Because like she said, a Winchester rifle should have a place of honor in every black home. And it should be used for that protection which the law refuses to give. This is what she was saying at a time where you had a black person getting lynched or by a mob, by a racist white mob every day or day and a half of this country. She was a pioneer in investigative journalism. She would cover all these lynchings. She called lynch law, where when white folks just took it upon themselves to be vigilantes to protect so-called precious white womanhood and the white way of life, they would deny black people their right to a jury at all, of any type, not just a jury of their peers. They violated black folks' human and civil rights, drag them out of jail cells, and would lynch them. Like Ida B. Wells experienced that firsthand for herself, because at first she thought, like a lot of black people be thinking, when they hear about a black person getting killed by the police. Black folks, you got black folks thinking like that 100 something years ago. Well, maybe they did something wrong. Maybe the police had to kill them because they wouldn't follow and obey orders or direction. Maybe they were getting a little bit too sassy and uppity. You had black folks thinking like that back then. Ivy Wells thought about that. She thought that the black people that were being lynched by the white folks, maybe they were just criminals. Then one day, one of her dear friends, Thomas Moss, and his business partners were lynched by white men. They would drag out their jail cells, deny a jury of their peers in due process, and they were horribly mutilated and lynched in a vacant lot in Memphis, Tennessee, back in 1892. And then she realized the reason why they were lynched was because they were very successful entrepreneurs. See, they had a grocery store called the People's Grocery Store that was in competition with a white grocer across the street. However, their grocery store, the People's Grocery Store, was doing more business than the white guy's grocery store. So he was very envious of Thomas Mouse and his business partners. And so as soon as they were killed, they allowed the white man to buy their property, to control their store after their death. And Thomas Mouse pleaded with the white mob to not kill him. He had a son on the way. He had a little young daughter. Ivy Wells was the godmother of his young daughter. And he had a male child on the way. He told him, please have mercy on me. Please, Mr. White Man, don't kill me, white man. I have a family to support. And they said, well, nigger, we'll give you some last words. And he said, basically, as according to witnesses, because there was some journalists there, which is interesting. He said, tell my people to go west. There is no justice for us here. Once again, he said, tell my people to go west. There is no justice for us here. And they killed him. They didn't care about this man having a family. He begged for his life. You know, he had a successful business. He was no troublemaker. He was a leader of the community in Memphis. He was respected by people of all walks of life, but he was hated because he was successful. And Ivy Wells put it together and said, look, they're not killing us because we're criminals. They're killing us because they don't want us to be engaged and be successful in certain areas of human activity, whether it be business or politics or education. Then she found out that when a black man was lynched for allegedly raping a white woman, that the relationships for the most part were consensual relationships. You had white women seeking out black men to be in these relationships. So enough was enough. These white folks had enough of her. Said, we're going to get this cracker wench. They ain't know what color she, they ain't know if she was a man or woman, because she was signing off her newspaper articles with the word A.L.L. But Ivy Wells, she was no fool. Like, she believed in guns and protecting yourself with guns. She was a short, petite, beautiful little sister, brown, pretty brown woman, short, petite, but she was known for carrying guns around with her. She had 2 pistols on her person. She said, if I gotta go, I'm gonna take some people with me. That's how she was thinking. She was gangster. Ivy Wells was gangster. She spoke truth to power, and she didn't let her fear get the best of her. She carried her 2 guns around. She said, if I gotta go down, they going down with me. So luckily she was out of town when the white folks got together to burn down her newspaper office on Bill Street. And she left the South and stayed out the South unless she was sticking back in for cases and for other work of activism. But yeah, but she believed in black folks protecting themselves. And you look at now, you got black folks talking about what happened to Stephon Clark. I believe his name was Stephon Clark in Sacramento. Ain't no difference what happened to Jordan Davis or Trayvon Martin or Mike Brown, or if you go back 50 years ago in Memphis, what happened to Larry Payne, who was shot down by the police in front of eyewitnesses in the projects, similar to the same fashion that Mike Brown was shot down by Darren Wilson back in the summer of 2014. So I say all this to say, it's a long podcast, but I'm just dropping things because they're not going to put this out there on Joy Reid show. They're not going to put this out there on any of those shows. And that's why it's so important to promote and support real citizen journalism. Because I'm offering y'all my time. I can't get that time back, but I just want to get it out there that people are mad at Killer Mike for the wrong reasons. That means you mad at Killer Mike and y'all love Marcus Garvey, y'all love the Nation of Islam. Both with Marcus Garvey and the Nation of Islam, they have a history of dealing with the Ku Klux Klan. They dealt with the Ku Klux Klan. Thurgood Marshall was an FBI informant for J. Edgar Hoover. So I mean, like, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance, right? To know that your pro-black people would deal with their enemy, but it's politics, and they say politics make for strange bedfellows. And what we do ourselves with this service is that we cut ourselves off, not realizing that allies are not friends. Allies are people you use for leverage to get what you want. You help them, they help you. That's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a fair exchange. But black folks never get a fair exchange because we forgot how to play the game. You know, leadership to me is not people getting on social media, they in elected office and talking about Trump is the devil, Trump is this and that. Your job as a public servant, as an elected official, is to help out your constituents. It's not about your personal feelings. It's not about you. It's about them. You should be serving the people. And that's another thing. If you broke and you like easy money and perks, stay your ass out of elected office. If you are broke and you like perks and easy money, stay your ass out of elected office. They're gonna set you up. Your ass gonna be doing football numbers in the pen because you gotta really be there to serve the people. Marion Barry just got a statue unveiled in D.C. and people, they were trying to tell him he a crackhead. Yeah, that's his personal problem. But he was an honest dealer when it came to public service and politics. Marion Barry did not die rich. What he did, he enriched his community. His legacy is a living one because he invested in people. He made sure that black contractors got government contracts. He created a black business and wealth class in the DC area that people have benefited from to this day. One of the most effective politicians we ever had that was produced out of black America, Marion Barry. But yet, here's how fucked up people are. They'll talk about a person's shortcomings or vices, but if a person helped you in spite of your vices, in spite of his or her vices, why not accentuate the positive? We're just human. Dr. King had his flaws, so what? He's a human. That makes what he was able to do even greater, even more impressive, in spite of his shortcomings and flaws, and just being a human. So I say all this to say, just don't take my word for it. Take a look. It's all online, and y'all, hands off Killer Mike. The ancestors, for the most part, they ride with Killer Mike. Whether it be Ida B. Wells, whether it be Malcolm X, Robert F. Williams, Eddie Noel, Robert Charles. Who are these people? Teddy Rowe. These are people I'm naming at the end. I'm not going to tell you who the people are. I'm going to have to write these books and make y'all pay for this information every now and then. And before I go, if you like the words from Brother Hurd, please spread the word. Support the movement. Make a one-time or recurring donation through PayPal, or you can make a recurring donation and join the We All Be movement on Patreon.com. That's Patreon.com/WeAllBe, or buy and wear Artivist gear, which is available at R2C2HU.com or at the Teespring links provided in the subscription box below. And remember, once again, boys and girls, knowledge is the currency of the universe. You can use it, or you could be used by it. Okay, so thank y'all so much. In the words of the great Duke Ellington, we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing. One love. Peace.